today is Justin Brooks, Application Engineer for Inceptra. Based on the West Coast, Justin has been focused for several years on the topic of manufacturing within the Dassault Systèmes suite of applications. We do appreciate that you've taken the time to join us today, so without further ado, I will now turn it over to Justin, who will begin our presentation of 3D Experience for Manufacturing. Justin?
Thank you for that introduction, Jason, and thank you everyone for attending the webinar today. Real quick before we get started, I just want to take a look at the agenda and let you know what we're going to be looking at this afternoon. So the very first thing we want to touch on is kind of introducing everyone to the 3D Experience platform. Kind of discuss what it is, how it differs from V5, and then we'll take a look at manufacturing specifically and some of the enhancements and improvements in 3D Experience over CATIA V5. So we have a few slides going over a few of those values, and then we'll take a look at a live demonstration, introduce you to the interface, the applications, and some of the manufacturing applications. Today, and then at that time, answer any questions that have been submitted during the presentation. So before we get started, I just want to enter a poll for everyone to take a look at. So Jason, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and share that poll, and everyone should see a poll on your screen.
Yeah, we'll just keep this open for about 20 seconds or so to collect responses.
Okay, so some of you may be familiar with 3D Experience V6. Some of you, this might be kind of a brand new topic for you. But I just want to get an idea of how many enhancements you think are in 3D Experience over V5 specifically.
So thank you everyone for the responses. I've closed the poll, and Justin is now sharing the results.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Okay, excellent. So the answer to that specific poll is over 40. Okay, so there's been a great number of enhancements in 3D Experience over V5. And today, what I wanted to do is take a look at a few of those key improvements. Again, this is the kind of latest version of V6. So let's jump right into it and kind of take a look at what 3D Experience is. So we can think of 3D Experience as the latest version of V6. Currently, we're at version 2015X. That is the latest one currently available. Essentially, what 3D Experience is a brand new platform that unifies the user experience. Okay, so we're going to be focusing on manufacturing today, but the 3D Experience platform covers more than that. Okay? The applications extend into multiple disciplines beyond manufacturing engineering into the sales and marketing and financing departments, for instance. And the key to this is that all of these applications are delivered through a single interface or infrastructure. And one thing I'll note that we're very excited about in the latest version of 3D Experience is that we have the on-premise deployment available, but we also have a cloud-based or subscription service available for small businesses that allows us to implement the infrastructure remotely, and all this information can be accessed by users remotely as well. So I won't focus too much on the cloud-based solution today, but I wanted to make sure that you're aware that's available. That's something that's available now and can be implemented at any time. So let's take a closer look at what I mean when I say unified user experience. So I want to look at one of my favorite things in 3D Experience, and that is the compass. So we have four main quadrants here. We're going to focus on the 3D modeling apps and content and simulation applications specifically. So a lot of you on this call this afternoon are familiar with these applications. Many of you have worked with CATIA in the past, whether it's doing part design, assembly design, or surfacing, and manufacturing as well. And also you may have experience with content and simulation apps such as Dalmia and Simulia. So up until now, all of these apps have been delivered through a different platform. So if you can recall, you have CATIA. Some of you might be using the Innovia DMU Navigator or 3D Via, or even using our XElite product, which is an information intelligence app. Basically captures all of your business metrics and kind of displays those in the dashboard for you. Okay. So up until now, the way these have been deployed haven't really made sense. We have different interfaces in some instances. We have different installations. So the idea behind the 3DEXPERIENCE platform is all of these applications are available in one specific interface and platform, which means how we interact with the data, whether it's 3D models or files or objects or anything like that, we do through one single interface that's consistent across the board. And that's one of the biggest key values when we start taking a look at 3DEXPERIENCE, is how everything is right at our fingertips through this compass. And we'll get a better picture of that when we jump into 3DEXPERIENCE and take a look at what it looks like to use it. So we have a lot of things available to us on the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. Today, what we're going to focus on are the manufacturing applications. Okay? So these applications you should be familiar with if you've used CATIA manufacturing in the past. We're talking about prismatic machining, multi-axis machining, mill turn or lathe machining. All of that functionality is still there. It's just been reorganized by Dassault into the Delmia process, or sorry, solution. Okay? Because there's a wide range and breadth of applications in the 3DEXPERIENCE platform, what Dassault has done is kind of organize these into industry-specific solutions. So the majority of you guys on the call this afternoon are probably in the aerospace and defense industry solution, which has a number of processes and process experience below that. But the key thing here is that all of that functionality you're familiar with in CATIA manufacturing is still available in 3DEXPERIENCE. It's just part of the Delmia process experience now. These applications are still available to us, and we'll take a look at that when we get into the live demonstration. So there are four main manufacturing processes I'm going to focus on. Again, these are manufacturing related. So I'm going to touch on prismatic machining, milling machine, multi-axis, and mill turn. Right? If you want to think about it in V5 terminology, these can be almost compared to workbenches, except now they're applications under the Delmia platform. And there are a number of advantages this gives us now that these are applications under 3DEXPERIENCE. Right? So I wanted to take a look at some of those key values, kind of explain where the differences are and what's new in 3DEXPERIENCE. So before I get into that, I want to ask Jason just to display one more poll. And I want to kind of get a sense of how you're currently managing your files. Okay. Are you, Jason, if you could go ahead and display that poll.
Sure can. Yep, so we'll leave this open again for about 20 seconds while we collect your answers. So thank you, everyone, as you're making those submissions.
Thank you, Jason. Again, we want to get an idea of how you're currently managing your files. So V5 is file-based, so there's a lot of process, cat parts, products, assemblies, drawings, etc. That need to be managed. Sometimes they're just stored on a network share. You may have some third-party PDM applications, or you may even be using Innovia SmartTeam currently.
Yep. So Justin, it looks like a large part of our audience is storing files on a network share.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. Okay. So thanks, everyone, for your responses. So that gets us into the very first advantage we have with 3DEXPERIENCE, and that's the database integration. Okay, so with 3DEXPERIENCE, all of our models, files, programs, resources, everything is actually stored on a single platform, which is a Novia V6. We are no longer using files in 3DEXPERIENCE, so there's no more cat parts, cat products, etc. Everything we're going to be working with in 3DEXPERIENCE is actually an object and a database, and that gives us quite a few distinct advantages over files. First and foremost is that we're able to manage links and associativity between processes, resources, all the way down to tools and tool assemblies inside of a single database. What that means is that we can easily search or access these specific objects through searching its metadata. So we can search for specific items that are of a specific type or made by or created by a specific user, and allows us to get to what we need quicker. And since these objects are in the database, they're always guaranteed to be at the latest revision. Okay? So now there are no more questions when it comes to opening up a model. In V5, for instance, we may not know if the version we have is up to date. Was this modified by someone else? Is this the correct one? All those questions and uncertainties are eliminated because all that information is tied to the object in the database. Another benefit we get from this is it's not only the manufacturing department or the engineering department that has access to this data, it's accessible by everyone in the organization, which promotes collaboration between everyone. We'll focus on the NC and design and shop floor aspects of it, but this goes again beyond the manufacturing discipline, into engineering, analysis, finance, etc. Okay. So that's one of the key differences in 3DEXPERIENCE. We're now working with the database, and it's not file-based anymore. Okay. So let's take a closer look at the resources specifically. So the method in which we go about programming in 3DEXPERIENCE has changed. Okay. So our goal when we go to actually program a part is to, first of all, make sure we're using the correct machine tool. Make sure the resources such as tools, fixtures, mices, etc., are available, and we can manage the life cycle of those components. So what this means is that everything, one of the key terms we have for this is called resource configuration milling, or RCM. And I'll give a good example of this when we get into live demonstration, but the idea behind this is we select a machine or a machine cell that brings in all of the tools that are in that machine turret, for instance, all of the accessories available to that machining cell, and it represents what we have available on the shop floor. Okay. And we'll look at a little bit closer into what that means for us as programmers when we get into these demonstrations. Okay. Moving beyond the database and the resources, we'll take a look at some of the advancements in milling and mill turning. Okay. So because we're using these machine cells or resource configuration management, we're setting up the complete setup. Okay. Not only the NC assembly with our part in stock, but also fixtures, vices, clamps, etc., tooling. What that means is before we create any tool paths or insert any machining operations, we have the ability to confirm that a specific machine cell is going to work for our for the programming of our part. We can check the tool axis orientation. We can check reachability before anything is actually computed. Okay. So some of the other additional enhancements, we have a number of machining strategies that are added to the 3DEXPERIENCE platform, and a few new operations. One of those operations is the stiffener operation. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. And then the other thing I'll note here regarding the milling is that the toolpath computation utilizes multi-core processors out of the box. What that means is the toolpath computation time is drastically reduced, and that's helpful for finished toolpaths or any large complex parts. Moving into the mill turn. Mill turn and mill turn app simulation is available in V5, but the functionality has been greatly expanded upon. So we have the ability to specify multiple tool change and head change position. And one of the key differences in 3DEXPERIENCE is that we have the ability to program the machine components themselves, the turrets, the counter spindles, etc., as opposed to just only the tools. And I have a great example of this once we get into it to show you kind of the possibilities of the app source simulation. So real quick, Jason, once more, I'd like to go ahead and show one more poll for you guys. So that should be appearing shortly. Thank you, Jason. Mm-hmm. So I want to get an idea of how you're currently validating your tool paths. Okay, so that's one of the important things. So there are a couple of options there. Some of you may be using CATIA V5 machine simulation currently, or maybe some third-party application, or using some other method of some sort.
All right, Justin, so here are the results for you. So several people are using VeriCut, and surprisingly, there are some still not doing any validation.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. So thanks for that feedback, everyone. So let's jump into the simulation, and there are a couple of key points here that I want to point out. So one of the biggest changes in 3DEXPERIENCE for manufacturing is that the app source or centerline simulation functionality is available out of the box, even with just a prismatic machining license or application. Okay, and that kind of goes along with what we're trying to do when it comes to resource configuration. Again, the approach we take to machining in 3DEXPERIENCE is now programming a machine tool and its accessories and resources to program a part, as opposed to just programming the part geometry like we were in V5. Okay. We'll take a look at a couple examples of this, but again, what that means is that with even just a basic prismatic machining license, you have the ability to simulate app source using a defined machine. Okay. If you are familiar or have used V5 simulation in the past, you'll notice significant improvements in the performance. In 3DEXPERIENCE, it's been greatly improved upon. It runs much quicker, computations much smoother. And also we have the ability to actually save these simulation results into animations and play those back later. We also even have the option of exporting those animations out to 3D XML, so other users such as operators on the floor can actually play those back in a free player. Okay. So now what I'd like to do is jump into a demonstration of 3DEXPERIENCE, introduce everyone to the interface, what it looks like. We'll take a look at searching and opening objects in the database, and then talk about those resource configurations, also a couple of enhancements such as the stiffener operation, and then we'll take a look at an example of some app source simulation. So now on my screen, you should see the 3DEXPERIENCE interface. So I'll just note that I'm in the Los Angeles area, and I'm actually connecting to our Inceptra database at the headquarters in Florida. So again, it's no longer file-based. I'm going to be interacting with objects that are actually up on our database. Before we get too deep into searching and the like, I want to introduce you guys to the compass, which I had mentioned before. So we have 4 quadrants. Again, I want to focus on the 3D modeling. So once I click this, it's going to bring up a list of applications. Okay. And again, you can kind of think of these as workbenches in V5. They're a little bit different. So we have a number of applications under 3D modeling, such as our assembly design, part design, drafting, etc. And then on the south portion of the compass, we have our content and simulation, which are DALMIA or manufacturing-related applications. And this is what I want to focus on. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and start up my multi-axis machining application, and we'll take a look at the interface. So right away, you'll notice that the interface is a little bit different, a little bit cleaner. But as we dig into it a little bit deeper, you'll see that there are some similarities to V5, so it's not completely new and completely foreign to us. So what I'd like to do is just take a brand new PPR context or process and actually insert a machining cell or resource configuration, mount a vice, and then position the design part to show you how we would go about that in a basic sense here. The very first thing I'm going to do is actually load a configuration from the database. And this is kind of our first introduction to working with the database and objects as opposed to files. So I'm going to go ahead and search for a specific machining cell. I can go ahead and search the database, and I'll pick that and click OK. And that's actually going to bring it into our PPR context. Right? So again, the idea here is we're going to be programming a manufacturing cell which contains the machine and its resources, as opposed to just programming the part like we would in V5. Okay? So we'll go ahead and let that load, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like and take a look at the specification tree. And show you kind of what's been brought in with that manufacturing cell. Okay. So once this comes in, I'll zoom out a little bit, and you'll see we have our machine here. If I expand the tree, it's not only brought in our machine resource, but any tool or tool assemblies available on that machine, plus any fixtures that are available at that machine as well. So again, the idea here is not just to bring in a machine tool resource, but everything else along with that. From here, I'm going to go ahead and actually associate a specific manufacturing setup. So you can think of this as your NC assembly in V5. So again, because we're working with a database and not files, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick search. Again, I can always search for the database for a specific setup, or I can always select from the current session. So I'll go ahead and select that setup, bring that into my process here. And the next thing I'm going to do is mount the vice or our accessory here. So you see we have a number of accessories here. In this case, I'm interested in the vice, so I'm going to go ahead and right-click on that and select Mount. And it's going to allow me to actually position this on the machine. So if anyone's familiar with V5 simulation, this wasn't always the easiest path, but in 3DEXPERIENCE here, it's a much more intuitive process. Okay? I'm just going to go ahead, specify the position of the vice on the riser plate there, modify the orientation. The next step I want to do here is actually set up my part operation. So now we get into the portion of 3DEXPERIENCE that's very similar to V5. In this case, we'll look at the part operation. And the very first step here is to actually specify the NC assembly. And I also want to specify my stock and my design components. So the picks and clicks and the dialogues and everything you see here will be fairly similar. So I'm going to go ahead and select rough stock design part. We're going to also specify fixtures and our machine 0. So we'll go ahead and take care of that. And you'll see a lot of these dialogues are fairly similar to what we have in V5. Okay, so we have a much cleaner, nicer interface that's not too different from what we've been working on in the past. Okay. So I've set up my part operation. The very next thing I want to do here is actually mount my workpiece into my vice. Okay. So I'm going to bring up the mounting window here. I'll select my axis system. And we'll go ahead and we'll see that we get kind of an interface here that allows us to kind of adjust the component here. So let's specify some offsets and just position this to my liking. Once I'm happy, I'll go ahead, click OK, and confirm that. And now I've set up my machine tool, the accessories, the riser plate device, and then my design part and stock body. From here on out, I would go about programming my part very similar to how I would do it in V5. The difference here is that we have a slightly cleaner interface, and we're setting up the setup to represent what we actually have on the floor. Okay? So what we're trying to avoid here with resource configuration is selecting devices that aren't actually at the machine, or selecting tool resources that aren't actually part of the machine itself on the floor. And what we achieve by doing this is a more efficient and streamlined manufacturing process. Okay. So go ahead and insert a simple facing operation, and we get a preview of our tool path, and I can always jump into the material removal. Okay. So this is just a very basic example of setting up a 3-axis machine with some accessories and positioning our component. With that, I want to go ahead and take a look at another process, take a closer look at some additional options that we have and one of the brand new machining operations. Okay. So I'm actually going to open up a part. So the first thing I want to do is actually search the database for a specific PPR. Okay. So I'll go ahead at the top here, type in a portion of the name, and it's going to return results from the database with matches here. Okay. So we get a lot of previews here for certain components, and I can kind of drill down, search for other specific types of components. But one of the biggest benefits we have with this being the infrastructure behind the scenes being a database is that there's metadata associated with these objects. And through the use of tags, I can actually drill down and locate exactly what I need. Okay. So I've searched for anything with this term in it, but I'm going to drill down and take a look at things that I've created. And then more specifically, I want to look at CPR context that I've created. So as I add tags, it's going to narrow my search to any objects that match this criteria. Okay? And this is hugely useful. Again, there's an innumerable amount of metadata on these objects that we can search against, and we can also save these into favorites for later use. So I've located the PPR process that I'd like to work with. So I'm actually going to right-click and explore this and give you kind of a preview of what we call the navigation layer. So before committing an open and actually opening this machine resource, accessories, NC assembly, etc., if we were to explore this, we get essentially a 3D thumbnail that acts as a preview for the object we're going to open up. So this is extremely lightweight, quick. It allows us to confirm that we've kind of opened up or explored exactly what we're looking for. So this is what I'm looking for. So I'll go ahead and just open this. And that's going to bring us into our manufacturing application. Okay. So again, no more files. We have the objects in the database. We're able to search for those objects using tags, preview our selection, and then open that and begin our programming. Okay. So with this PPR open, we have some items that set up here currently at my part operation set up and some other things like that. So I want to go ahead and revisit the 3D mounting. So let's go ahead and turn off our stock and take a look at our 3D mounting reachability test. So we looked at this really quickly on the last part. So we're able to mount this to the machine. It's already in the mount position. What I want to focus on is the option to check reachability. Okay. So before I even create any toolpaths on this part or specify any machine operations, I can come in here and actually check and make sure that what I need to machine on this part, I am able to do on this machine. So anywhere I click in the preview box on the part, it's going to position the tool there and then actually position the machine and let me know if I'm able to reach that specific area. So if I come over here on the outer wall, click to position the machine, and I can actually click and drag the tool axis to modify that. As soon as that tool turns this teal color, it means I'm out of bounds. So there's some kind of travel fault, and we can't reach that. So this is a great way to check and make sure that a specific machine, a specific setup is going to work before we have to create all the tool paths. Okay? So what this allows us to do is recognize any issues up front and take care of those before we spend time actually programming. So I'll go ahead and jump onto this. Click OK. And we'll take a look at the stiffener operation, which is one of those brand new operations that is not available in V5. So go ahead and open up this operation. And one thing you'll notice right off the bat if you work with V5 manufacturing workbenches is that the definition dialog is very similar. It's got the same 5 tabs here. Our parameters, our picks and clicks for specifying our part, drive surfaces, or safety plane, etc., are very similar. Okay? So we have a different interface, a much cleaner interface, but still it's not a huge departure from what you may be used to. So I'll go ahead and specify the geometry here. So the idea behind the stiffener operation is to quickly finish the tops of the ribs for structural parts like this in one single operation instead of having multiple operations. Okay? So again, this is a machine operation that Dassault implemented in 3DEXPERIENCE that's not available in V5, and this came about as a result of requests from the user group. Essentially, they wanted to be able to finish these stiffeners quicker on the parts. So Dassault R&D went ahead, developed this, and it's now included in 3DEXPERIENCE. Okay. So once I generate the toolpath here, I can go ahead and step back and kind of replay that and get an idea of what that's going to look like. So at the top of the webinar, we had a quick poll regarding how many enhancements there were in 3DEXPERIENCE over V5. And the answer is a lot. And there's continual improvements. 2016X comes out with the additional stuff. Excuse me. Okay. With that, I want to go ahead and jump to one last example. We'll take a look at a mill turn machine and kind of delve a little bit deeper into the app source simulation side of things. So again, I'm going to back up and go ahead, and this time instead of searching and using my tags, I'm actually just going to go to my favorite content, and we'll see PPR that I've actually saved before. Okay? So looking at my favorites here as a thumbnail, I'll go ahead and open that. We'll get the preview. It allows me to confirm that this is what I'm looking for. Looks good. So we'll go ahead and open that, and we'll go into the machining workbench and again take a look at the simulation. Okay. So again, one thing I'll point out here is that I am in Southern California, and I'm actually pulling the data down from the Florida server. Okay. So one of the other benefits to being things being stored as objects in the database is that we can stream the important parts of a object. So instead of having to load everything in the machine, things are kind of loaded lightweight. Any changes are kind of streamed back to the server. So it's a much more efficient process when it comes to updating and modifying than we had previously with files. So in this instance, I have a machine tool resources set up. I actually just want to take a look at the part operation here. So a number of tool changes, and more importantly, the machine instructions divided into 2 programs here. Okay. So one of the points I mentioned before is not only are we programming a machine tool instead of the part geometry itself, when it comes to these more complex mill turn machines, we also have the ability to program the accessory, the counter spindle and the rest. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a look at synchronization here. And again, with the mill turn application, we have complete control over the synchronization of tool changes, operations, movements in the accessories, etc. So what I'm going to do is step back and jump into the app source simulation. Okay. To get to the app source simulation, it's simply one click. I'm going to go up to the top here and click my play button, and it's going to bring me directly into my app source simulation. So once that comes up, we'll get a little play dialog box, and we'll go ahead and play that, and I'll show you a few options we have. Okay. So now we're in our app source simulation. I'll go ahead and hit play, and you'll see we get complete visibility of the program itself. Let's go ahead and turn on the stock and the part, and actually rewind that a little bit to show that one more time. Okay. So you'll notice as the program starts, the counter spindle is going to come up. It's going to run out the roughing contour, and then our rest is on our turret. It's going to position itself for the next operation. Okay. So again, we're not just programming to the geometry. We're programming the tool with its resources. We're programming its accessories, and we have complete finite control over all the motions. And more importantly, with our app source simulation, we can detect any issues up front, any collisions between the turret, spindle, anything like that. Okay, and we're in the same platform, so there's no conversion. So let's take an example with V5. If we're using V5, we could program to the part. We get a program. We can send that out to a third-party application. There's some translation involved, some setup there. Here, just by clicking one button, I'm instantly brought into the app source simulation. I can play back and catch any of those errors. Ultimately, what that means is that I'm able to program more efficiently, catch any errors up front that would cost me time to correct if the validation didn't catch it, and also and the other benefit there is that when we program our machine, we have visibility to everything. There's collision detection, fault lists, all of that good stuff that we need to validate what we've programmed is available to us in one single platform. And the other thing I'll note, and hopefully it's coming across over the webinar here, is that the actual simulation itself is running very smoothly. So just in my experience from using V5 machine simulation versus the 2015X platform, is it's much quicker, much smoother, and much more stable. Okay. So I'm going to jump out of this and just make one more comment here. I'll go ahead and bring up my specification tree and mention one other item. So with the app source simulation, we have the ability to actually create an animation, essentially compile that simulation into an animation and play that back. So I've done this previously, just with Op1 here, and stored this animation. So what this means is that if we come back to this PPR or process later and want to investigate the simulation again, we can just pull up the review. We also have the ability to export these animations out to 3DXML, so other users such as operators can view what the machine can do or review this animation in a 3DXML player. Okay. The idea there is we more effectively communicate what exactly is expected to happen on the machine tool and inform the operator as to what to expect. So hopefully this has given everyone on the call here a good overview of not only the interface, but the database, some of the enhancements available to us. What we've looked at today. So first of all, we have a brand new user experience. Not only does that mean we have a brand new user interface, but our different applications, whether it's CATIA, or Xelmia, Simulia, etc., that's all found under one or organized under one experience, which is now the 3D experience. Okay. With that, the manufacturing applications have been enhanced. So there are new manufacturing operations, such as the stiffener operation, which we've just looked at. We have the ability to organize machine tools, resources associated with that tool into what we call machine cells, and reuse those to actively machine tool itself and achieve all of those benefits that we discussed before. And lastly, to hit on that one point, it's not file-based. All the machining data is stored in a database, which is fully searchable. and easily manageable when it comes to versioning, creating duplicates, etc.